They say money talks, but in the VIP section of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, silence was about to cost Marcus Sterling $1 billion. He sat there, sweating through his $3,000 suit, staring at a contract he couldn't read and a Chinese CEO he couldn't understand. He was drowning. And when the quiet, invisible waitress pouring his water timidly offered to help, Marcus didn't just say no. He laughed in her face. He pointed a finger at her and sneered to his board members. "If this girl can translate a complex merger, I'll give her my job right now." He thought it was a joke. He thought he was untouchable. He had no idea that the woman standing with the water pitcher held the power to destroy his entire career with a single sentence. This is the story of how arrogance lost a fortune, and how the invisible girl finally demanded to be seen. The Onyx Room did not smell like food. It smelled of old money, mahogany, and the faint, crisp scent of freshly printed legal tender. It was the kind of establishment nestled in the Upper East Side of New York City, where the menu had no prices, and the waiters were expected to be as silent and fluid as shadows. Elena Vance adjusted the collar of her stiff, white uniform, wincing slightly. Her feet, encased in cheap black non-slip shoes from Walmart, were throbbing. She had been on a double shift for 3 days straight. Every step sent a sharp jolt of pain up her calf, a constant nagging reminder of why she was here. She wasn't here for the glamour. She was here for the tips. Specifically, she was here for the pile of medical bills currently gathering dust on her kitchen table in Queens. Her father, Arthur, had been diagnosed with a rare degenerative ocular condition. The surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital cost $40,000, not covered by insurance. Eleanor had $6,000 saved. She was running out of time, and tonight the Onyx Room was hosting the most important dinner of the fiscal year. "Eleanor," the floor manager, a severe man named Pierre, hissed from the shadows of the service station. "Table 4, the Sterling party. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact. Just pour." "Yes, Pierre," Elena whispered, gripping the heavy crystal water pitcher. Table 4 was the centerpiece of the restaurant. Seated at the head was Marcus Sterling. At 32, Marcus was the vice president of acquisitions for Sterling Hale, a massive private equity firm inherited from his grandfather. Marcus was the definition of the golden boy, blonde, impeccably jaw-lined, and radiating an aura of unearned confidence. He wore a navy Brioni suit that cost more than Eleanor's annual rent. Surrounding him were 3 other junior executives: Brad, a nervous man with a tablet, Jessica, who looked bored, and Tom, who was already drunk on the vintage Pinot Noir. "I'm telling you it's in the bag," Marcus said, his voice carrying effortlessly over the low hum of the restaurant. He gestured with a fork loaded with truffle risotto. "The Zhang delegation is desperate. Their stock in Shanghai dipped 4% last week. They need American capital. I'm going to lowball them on the lithium extraction rights, and they're going to say, 'Thank you, Mr. Sterling, for the privilege.'" Elena approached the table silently. She moved with a practiced grace, filling Marcus's glass without splashing a drop. He didn't look at her. To him, she was just a floating hand, a mechanism of service. "Are you sure about the translator, Marcus?" Brad asked, tapping his tablet nervously. "The agency said the guy was stuck in traffic on the FDR drive." Marcus waved a dismissive hand, nearly knocking the pitcher from Elena's grip. She adjusted quickly, stepping back. "Relax, Brad. The guy is 10 minutes away. Besides, these guys speak English. They always pretend they don't buy thinking time. It's a negotiation tactic. I read about it in The Art of War or something." Elena bit her lip. She kept her eyes lowered, moving to Jessica's glass. "I don't know," Brad mumbled. "CEO Zhang is old school. He's strictly Mandarin. If we offend him—" "We won't offend him," Marcus snapped, his charm slipping for a second to reveal the bully beneath. "I control the money. Money is the universal language. Now, order another bottle of the 98 Margot. I want them to see we have taste." Eleanor finished the round and retreated to the shadows. Her heart was pounding, but not because of the intimidating guests. It was because of what she had overheard. Marcus Sterling was about to walk into a buzzsaw. Elena knew who CEO Zhang was. Zhang Wei. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a legend in the Asian tech sector, known as the Iron Tiger. He didn't care about American capital as much as he cared about Mianzi, face, honor, and respect. And more importantly, Eleanor knew that Zhang Wei rarely did business in English, not as a tactic, but as a test of his partner's commitment to understanding his culture. She knew this because 5 years ago, before the medical bills and the waitress uniform, Elena Vance hadn't been a server. She had been a doctoral candidate at Yale, specializing in East Asian dialects and international trade relations. She had lived in Chengdu for 3 years. She spoke Mandarin, Cantonese, and the specific Sichuanese dialect of the region Zhang was from. She had given it all up when her mother died, and her father got sick. She dropped out, came home, and took the job that paid cash immediately. "He's going to blow it," she whispered to herself near the kitchen doors. "Who cares?" muttered Carlos, the busboy, stacking dirty plates. "Rich people problems. Let him lose $1 million. Maybe he'll tip better if he's drunk." "No," Elena said, watching Marcus laugh loudly at his own joke. "If he loses this deal, the restaurant loses the contract for their corporate events. Pierre said, if we lose Sterling Hale, he has to cut staff." It wasn't just Marcus's money on the line. It was her job. It was her father's eyes. Just then, the heavy oak doors of the restaurant swung open. The air in the room seemed to change pressure. Enter the Zhang delegation. There were 5 of them, dressed in dark, conservative suits that made Marcus's Italian tailoring look flashy and cheap. At the center was Zhang Wei. He was a small man, perhaps 70, with silver hair and eyes that scanned the room like a hawk looking for a field mouse. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket, putting on his best Master of the Universe smile. "Mr. Zhang," Marcus boomed, extending a hand. "Welcome to the Onyx Room. I trust the flight was comfortable." Zhang Wei stared at Marcus's hand for a beat too long. He didn't shake it. He bowed slightly, a stiff, formal nod. He said something in rapid, clipped Mandarin to the young woman standing next to him. The woman looked terrified. She whispered back to Zhang, then looked at Marcus. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Zhang wishes to know. Where is the interpreter? He wishes to begin the proceedings immediately." Marcus froze. He looked at Brad. Brad looked at his phone. "He's 5 minutes away," Marcus stammered. "Traffic. You know New York." The woman translated this to Zhang. Zhang's face darkened. He spoke again, his voice lower, sharper. "Mr. Zhang says that punctuality is the first sign of integrity," the woman translated, her voice trembling. "He asks if your company handles its finances as loosely as it handles its schedule." Elena, watching from 10 feet away, felt a cold chill. That wasn't exactly what Zhang had said. He had used an idiom, a muddy ox entering the sea. It meant someone who disappears or is unreliable. The young woman with him wasn't a professional translator. She was likely a junior assistant who was too afraid to translate the insult directly. Marcus laughed nervously. "Tell him we have the best wine in the city. Please, sit." The dinner began in a disastrous, jagged rhythm. The translator Marcus had hired never showed up. The young assistant with Zhang was struggling to keep up with the technical financial terms Marcus kept throwing out. EBITDA, amortization schedules, equity splits. Every time the assistant stumbled, Zhang Wei grew quieter. And in high-stakes negotiation, silence is not golden. It is uranium. By the time the main course, roasted duck breast with cherry reduction, arrived, the atmosphere at table 4 was toxic. Marcus was sweating profusely now. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by a red-faced frustration. He was realizing that his charm wasn't working. He couldn't bro his way through a language barrier. "Brad, fix this," Marcus hissed through gritted teeth, leaning over the table while the Chinese delegation spoke quietly amongst themselves. "Use Google Translate on your phone if you have to." "I can't," Brad whispered, panicking. "It's a legal contract, Marcus. If Google gets a word wrong, we could be liable for millions. We need a human." Elena approached the table with a fresh bottle of sparkling water. As she leaned in to pour for Mr. Zhang, the CEO spoke to his second-in-command. He didn't think anyone could understand him. "Zhegiren shige baichi," Zhang muttered, looking at Marcus with pure disdain. "Tayiwai women, bujidao tadegongsi kwai pochanle." Elena's hand froze mid-pour. She caught herself instantly, but her heart skipped a beat. Zhang had just said, "This man is an idiot. He thinks we don't know his company is on the verge of bankruptcy." Elena's eyes widened. Sterling Hale was bankrupt? But Marcus acted like he owned the city. If they were bankrupt, this deal wasn't just an acquisition, it was a lifeline. If Marcus didn't close this tonight, his company would collapse. She finished pouring and stepped back, her mind racing. She should stay silent. Pierre had warned her. But if the company went under, the restaurant lost the account, and she lost her job. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "Look," he said loudly, startling the room. "I don't know what you guys are discussing, but the offer on the table is $50 million. Take it or leave it. We have other buyers." It was a bluff, a terrible, desperate bluff. Zhang Wei looked at Marcus. He understood the tone, if not the words. He stood up abruptly. He buttoned his jacket. The delegation rose with him. "Mr. Zhang is leaving," the terrified assistant squeaked. No, sit down." Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You can't leave. We haven't even discussed the battery patent." Zhang spoke again, sharp and final. He waved a hand toward the door. "He says there is no respect here," the assistant said. "He says he cannot do business with a deaf man." Marcus was panicking. He looked around the room, wild-eyed. He looked at Brad, at Jessica, even at the other diners. Then his eyes landed on Eleanor, who was standing frozen near the table, clutching her tray. He needed a target for his rage. He needed someone to blame. "You!" Marcus shouted at Eleanor. "You were hovering. Why didn't you fill his glass fast enough? You distracted him." "Sir, Eleanor started, her voice quiet. "Don't sir me!" Marcus barked. The entire restaurant fell silent. Other diners put down their forks. "This whole place is incompetent. Can't get a translator. Can't get a decent server. I bet you don't even know what's happening here, do you? You're just a tray carrier." Something inside Elena snapped. It was the exhaustion. It was the pain in her feet. It was the worry about her father. It was the sheer injustice of a man in a $5,000 suit blaming a girl making minimum wage for his own failure. She looked Marcus Sterling in the eye. "I know exactly what is happening, Mr. Sterling," Elena said. Her voice was steady, clearer than it had been all night. "You're trying to bully a man who values humility, and you are bluffing about a merger when he already knows your liquidity is drying up." The silence in the room stretched so tight it felt like a violin string about to snap. Brad dropped his fork. Jessica's mouth fell open. Marcus stared at her, blinking. His face went from red to a pale, dangerous white. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Excuse me? What did you just say to me?" "I said," Elena continued, clutching her tray tighter to stop her hands from shaking, "that Mr. Zhang isn't leaving because of the money. He's leaving because you insulted his intelligence by coming here without learning his language." Marcus scoffed, looking at his colleagues. "Did you hear that? The waitress is giving business advice. This is rich." He turned back to her, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "You think you're smart, huh? You think because you overheard a few words on the news you know how this works?" He gestured violently toward the baffled Chinese delegation. "If you're so smart," Marcus sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "go ahead. Fix it. Tell him to sit down. Translate the deal." He laughed again, a harsh, barking sound. "In fact, I'll make you a promise, sweetheart. If you can translate this technical lithium extraction contract and get him to sign it, I'll fire Brad right here and give you my job. Hell, I'll give you my yearly bonus." "Marcus, don't!" Brad whimpered. "Shut up, Brad," Marcus snapped. He looked at Elena, his eyes daring her. "Well, go on. Order him the Kung Pao chicken or whatever. Let's see what you've got." Elena looked at Marcus. She saw a man who had never been told no in his life. She looked at Mr. Zhang, who was watching the scene with a mix of confusion and curiosity. She thought of the medical bills. She thought of her father sitting in the dark because the lights hurt his eyes. Elena placed her tray on the side table. She smoothed her apron. She took a breath, inhaling the scent of money and roasted duck. She turned to Zhang Wei, and then she opened her mouth. Elena took a breath that tasted of cold anxiety and cleared her throat. She didn't look at Marcus. She looked directly at Zhang Wei, locking eyes with the man who had terrified a room full of millionaires. She spoke. "Zhang Zong, Qing Liu Bu, 这位 Sterling, Zhan Shengbu Dong Guiju, Dan Ta de Shengyi Shijende. 请给我一个机会解释." "Mr. Zhang, please stay. Mr. Sterling does not understand the rules of propriety, but his business is real. Please give me a chance to explain." The sound of her voice was like a tuning fork striking crystal in the middle of a chaotic room. It wasn't just that she spoke Mandarin. It was how she spoke it. She didn't sound like a student or a tourist. She slipped effortlessly into the Sichuan dialect, the specific, spicy, melodic rhythm of Zhang's home province. It was a dialect of tea houses and mountain villages, a sound of home. Zhang Wei froze. His hand, which had been reaching for the door handle, stopped in mid-air. He turned around slowly, his eyebrows knitting together in genuine shock. He looked at the waitress, the invisible girl in the white uniform with the cheap shoes, and for the first time that night, he really saw her. "Nishi Sichuan Ren?" "You are from Sichuan?" Zhang asked, his voice low and incredulous. "Wo zai Chengdu Zhulisan Nian," Elena replied, her posture shifting. She was no longer slouching in servitude. She stood with the straight-backed academic confidence she had honed in lecture halls at Yale. "I studied under Professor Liang at Sichuan University. I know that in your hometown, a deal without tea is just an argument. And I know that leaving now would save your face, but it would cost you the lithium access you need for your battery plants in Shenzhen." The silence at the table was absolute. Marcus Sterling's mouth was slightly agape, a piece of bread halfway to his lips. Brad was staring at Elena as if she had just sprouted wings. Zhang Wei stared at her for a long, intense moment. Then the corners of his mouth twitched. It wasn't a smile, but it was close. He walked back to the table and sat down. "Tell the boy," Zhang said in Mandarin. ignoring Marcus entirely and addressing Elena. "That he is lucky he has smart staff. I will give him 10 minutes. Because of you." Elena turned to Marcus. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by a look of bewildered panic. "What did he say?" Marcus demanded, his voice cracking slightly. "Is he leaving? What did you tell him?" "He said he's staying," Elena said coolly, picking up the wine bottle and refilling Zhang's glass with a steady hand. "But only because I asked him to. He's giving you 10 minutes to prove you aren't a waste of his time." Marcus swallowed hard. He looked at the contract, then at Eleanor. The power dynamic in the booth had shifted so violently it gave him whiplash. He was still the man in the suit, but he was no longer the man in charge. "Okay," Marcus stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead with a linen napkin. "Okay, fine. You want to play translator? Translate this. Tell him that Sterling Hale is offering a Tier 1 partnership. We're offering exclusive rights to the Nevada mines, but we need a 51% controlling stake in the joint venture." Elena frowned. She looked at the document spread on the table. She knew this deal. She read the Financial Times on her breaks. "Marcus," Elena said, using his first name for the first time. It felt strange, forbidden. "You can't ask for 51%. In China, foreign ownership of critical infrastructure is capped. If you ask for 51%, he legally has to say no. It's a trap. You need to ask for 49% with a variable profit share." "Excuse me?" Marcus snapped, his ego flaring up again. "I'm the VP of Acquisitions. I went to Wharton. You're a waitress. Just translate what I said." "If I translate exactly what you said, the deal dies," Elena said calmly. "And if the deal dies, you don't get your bonus, and your company goes under. Remember?" Marcus stared at her, his face turning a shade of purple. He looked at Brad. Brad gave a tiny, terrified shrug. "Fine," Marcus hissed through clenched teeth. "Do it your way. But if he walks, it's on you." Eleanor turned back to Zhang. She didn't translate Marcus's demand. Instead, she began to weave a narrative. She spoke of partnership, of mutual benefit. She used the correct honorifics. She explained the structure of the deal not as a conquest, but as a marriage of American resources and Chinese manufacturing efficiency. She proposed the 49% split, but added a shadow equity clause that would give Sterling Hale the revenue of a majority owner without violating Chinese law. It was brilliant. It was the kind of restructuring that lawyers charged $1,000 an hour for. Elena was doing it while standing in orthotic shoes. As she spoke, Zhang Wei's eyes lit up. He began to ask questions, hard, technical questions about environmental compliance and supply chain logistics. Elena didn't hesitate. She translated the questions to Marcus, stripped of their aggression, and translated Marcus's answers back to Zhang, stripped of their arrogance. She was a filter, removing the toxins from the conversation and leaving only the pure business. For 20 minutes, the onyx room faded away. There was no restaurant, no clinking silverware. There was just the rapid-fire exchange of billions of dollars conducted through the vessel of a woman who, an hour ago, wasn't allowed to make eye contact. "He likes the variable rate," Elena said, turning to Marcus. Her throat was dry, but her adrenaline was surging. "He's nodding. That's the Iron Tiger, Tel. He's ready to close." Marcus looked at her, breathless. He looked at the notes he had been scribbling on a napkin. "My God," he whispered. "We're actually doing it." "Brad, give me the pen. The Mont Blanc." Brad scrambled to hand over the expensive fountain pen. "Wait," Elena said, her hand shooting out to stop Marcus from sliding the contract across the table. "What now?" Marcus snapped, though there was less bite in it this time. "We're at the finish line." "He hasn't asked about the debt," Elena whispered. What debt? The rumors, Elena said, her voice dropping so the other servers wouldn't hear. Everyone in the financial sector knows Sterling Hale is over-leveraged. If Zhang signs this and finds out you used his investment to pay off old loans instead of building the mines, he'll sue you for fraud in international court. He'll destroy you. Marcus went pale. How do you know about the loans? I read, Elena said simply. You need to disclose it. Now. Frame it as restructuring costs. If you hide it, he'll find out. I can't tell him we're broke, Marcus hissed. He'll walk. He already knows you're struggling, Elena countered. He said it earlier. If you lie now, you prove him right. If you tell the truth, you show strength. It was the biggest gamble of the night. Marcus looked at the pen. He looked at the contract. He looked at the waitress who was currently smarter than his entire legal team. Tell him, Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. Elena turned to Zhang. She took a deep breath. This was the moment. Zhang Zong, she began, there is one final detail regarding the allocation of the initial capital. The disclosure of the debt hit the table like a physical weight. When Eleanor finished translating the restructuring costs, Zhang Wei went silent. His face became a mask of stone. The young assistant next to him stopped typing on her laptop. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. 20. Marcus was shaking. He gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. He glared at Elena. You ruined it, his eyes screamed. I trusted you and you ruined it. Zhang Wei picked up his glass of wine. He swirled it, watching the red liquid coat the glass. Then he looked at Marcus. He spoke one word in English. Honest. Marcus blinked. Excuse me? Zhang Wei switched back to Mandarin, speaking rapidly to Elena. A smile, a genuine, warm smile, broke across his face. He says, Elena translated, her voice thick with relief, that he has known about your debt for 3 months. He has spies in the Cayman Islands banking system. He was waiting to see if you would try to steal his money or ask for his help. Because you told the truth. He trusts you. Marcus slumped back in his chair, exhaling a breath that seemed to deflate his entire body. He knew. He was testing you, Elena said. It was a character test. You passed. Because I made you pass. Zhang reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a gold seal. He stamped the contract. Then he signed it with a flourish. It is done, the assistant said. We will transfer the initial tranche of $20 million tomorrow morning. The table erupted. Brad let out a whoop that caused heads to turn. Jessica clapped her hands. Even Pierre, the terrifying floor manager, was watching from the corner with a look of stunned approval. Marcus Sterling sat there, staring at the signed document. It was the biggest win of his career. He had just saved his family legacy. He was a hero, and he hadn't done a damn thing. He looked up at Elena. She was standing there, hands clasped behind her back, blending back into the scenery. The adrenaline was fading, and the exhaustion was returning. Her feet throbbed. Well, Marcus said, standing up. He buttoned his jacket, regaining his composure. The arrogance was creeping back in, like weeds growing through cracks in concrete. He picked up the contract and handed it to Brad. Good work, everyone. Exceptional pivot on the equity clause, Brad. Brad blinked. Thanks, Marcus. But... He glanced at Eleanor. Marcus turned to Eleanor. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick clip of cash, $100 bills. He peeled off 5 of them. $500. Here, Marcus said, holding the cash out to her. For your trouble. Good job with the translating stuff. Really saved us a headache waiting for the agency guy. Eleanor looked at the money. $500. It was a lot. It would pay for her father's medication for 2 weeks. But she remembered the bet. If this girl can translate a complex merger, I'll give her my job right now. Elena didn't take the money. Mr. Sterling, she said quietly. We had an agreement. Marcus laughed. It was a nervous, dismissive chuckle. Right. The job. Look, honey, let's be realistic. You did great, really. But you're a waitress. You don't have a degree. You don't know corporate law. I have a master's in international economics from Yale, Elena said, her voice cutting through his laughter. I was a doctoral candidate before I had to leave to care for my sick father. I speak 4 languages, and I just negotiated a deal you didn't even understand. The smile fell off Marcus's face. The table went quiet again. So? Marcus sneered, his defense mechanism activating. What do you want? You want to be a junior analyst? Send your resume to HR. Maybe I'll put in a good word. No, Elena said. She took a step forward. You said you would give me your job. But I don't want your job, Marcus. I don't want to be the vice president of a company that relies on lies and luck. She looked at the contract in Brad's hand. However, she continued, Clause 14b of that contract, the one Mr. Zhang just signed, designates a cultural liaison for the duration of the 5-year partnership, a position required to be filled by someone approved by both parties, salary to be determined by the value of the deal. Elena turned to Zhang Wei, who was watching the exchange with fascination. She spoke in Mandarin. Zhang Zong, would you trust this man to manage your affairs in Sichuan without a guide? Zhang laughed, a deep belly laugh. Absolutely not, he replied. I want you. You are the bridge. Elena turned back to Marcus. Mr. Zhang just appointed me as the cultural liaison for the project. My consultant fee is 2% of the deal's value. That's $1 million. Or you can explain to him why you are firing the only person he trusts. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't a request. It was a coup. You can't do that, Marcus sputtered. You work for the restaurant. Pierre! He waved frantically at the manager. Pierre stepped forward from the shadows. He looked at Marcus, then at Elena. Pierre knew about Elena's father. He knew she worked double shifts. And he had just seen Marcus Sterling treat his staff like garbage for 3 hours. Actually, Monsieur Sterling, Pierre said, his accent thick and cold. Elena clocked out 5 minutes ago. She is no longer my employee. She is a free agent. Marcus looked around the table. He was trapped. If he said no, Zhang would rip up the contract. If he said yes, he would have to pay a waitress, a woman he had mocked, more money than he made in a year. This is blackmail, Marcus whispered. No, Elena said, a small, sad smile playing on her lips. This is business. Just like you said. Money is the universal language. Marcus stared at her with pure hatred, but he had no choice. He gave a stiff, jerky nod. Fine, he choked out. You're hired, consultant, whatever. Elena nodded. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I'll expect the paperwork on Monday. She turned to leave, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had done it. She had actually done it. $1 million. Her father was saved. Her life was back. But as she reached for her apron strings to untie them, the heavy oak doors of the restaurant swung open again. A man walked in. He was tall, wearing a trench coat, with rain glistening on his shoulders. He looked frantic. He scanned the room, spotted table 4, and ran over. Mr. Sterling! Mr. Sterling! The man panted, out of breath. I'm so sorry. The FDR drive was a parking lot. There was an accident. I'm the translator from the agency. The table fell silent. Marcus looked at the new arrival. Then he looked at Elena. You're the translator? Marcus asked slowly. Yes, I have the credentials right here. The man fumbled with his bag. Marcus turned slowly to Elena. A slow, cruel grin spread across his face. The fear was gone. The leverage was gone. Well now, Marcus purred, stepping toward Eleanor. It seems we have a professional here now, which means we don't need a cultural liaison anymore, do we? Eleanor felt the floor drop out from under her. Mr. Zhang already signed the contract, she said, her voice wavering. He appointed me. He appointed a liaison, Marcus corrected. He didn't write your name in blood. And now that I have a certified, agency-vetted translator, he turned to the breathless man. Sir, tell Mr. Zhang that the waitress was confused. Tell him she is leaving, and that you will be handling the account from now on. The translator looked confused, but nodded. He turned to Zhang and began to speak in Mandarin. Elena watched in horror. Marcus had found a loophole. He was going to cut her out. He was going to take the win, the money, and the glory, and send her back to scrubbing tables. Zhang Wei listened to the new translator. He looked at Marcus, then at Elena. His face was unreadable. Elena held her breath. Everything depended on this stranger, this billionaire iron tiger. Would he honor the word of a waitress, or would he side with the man in the suit? Zhang stood up. He smoothed his jacket. He looked at the new translator and said one sentence. The translator turned pale. He looked at Marcus. What? Marcus asked. What did he say? Did he fire her? The translator swallowed hard. Mr. Sterling, Mr. Zhang says, he says, I do not do business with people who treat gold like gravel. The deal is cancelled. Marcus screamed. What? Zhang Wei turned to Eleanor. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. It was made of heavy cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. Come to my hotel tomorrow, Zhang said in Mandarin, ignoring the screaming Marcus. I do not want to buy his lithium anymore. I want to buy your brain. I have a subsidiary in New York that needs a CEO, someone who knows how to listen. He placed the card in Elena's hand. Then, without looking back, Zhang and his delegation walked out of the Onyx room, leaving Marcus Sterling standing in the wreckage of his career, screaming at a translator who had arrived 10 minutes too late. Elena looked down at the card. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a key to a new life. But as she watched Marcus crumbling, sobbing into his hands, she didn't feel triumph. She felt something cold. Because she knew men like Marcus Sterling, and she knew that when a man like that loses everything, he doesn't just cry. He seeks revenge. And Marcus Sterling was looking at her now, his eyes red and wild, filled with a promise of violence that had nothing to do with business. The transition from pouring water to moving mountains was not seamless. It was violent. 3 months had passed since the night at the Onyx room. Elena Vance sat in a corner office on the 40th floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. The sign on the frosted glass door read, Elena Vance, CEO, Viridia Global, a Zhang Group subsidiary. She wore a charcoal grey suit that had been tailored to her frame, replacing the baggy white polyester uniform that had defined her life for 2 years. Her father, Arthur, had successfully undergone surgery. He was at home, regaining his sight, able to see his daughter's face clearly for the first time in years. On paper, it was a fairy tale. In reality, it was a siege. Eleanor stared at the tablet on her mahogany desk. Her hands were shaking, a tremor she hadn't felt since her first night carrying a heavy tray. The headline on the New York Chronicle business page screamed in bold black letters, "From tips to top brass, did the waitress seduce the billionaire?" Below the headline was a blurry photo of Elena at the restaurant, looking disheveled, placed next to a formal headshot of Zhang Wei. The article was a masterpiece of misogyny and corporate assassination. It claimed she had no credentials, that she was a hostess with hidden talents, and that her appointment was a sign of Jiang Wei's senility. It didn't mention her Yale degree. It didn't mention her fluency in 4 languages. It didn't mention that she had saved a $1 billion deal from collapsing. "It's trending on Twitter," her assistant, a sharp young man named Leo, said quietly from the doorway. "Top 5. The hashtags are unkind." Elena swiped the screen off. "I don't care about Twitter, Leo. I care about the stock price." "Down 12% since the market opened," Leo grimaced. "Our 3 biggest logistics partners in New Jersey just put their contracts on hold. They say they're reviewing leadership stability." Elena stood up and walked to the window. The city sprawled below her, a grid of concrete and ambition. She knew exactly who was behind this. Marcus Sterling. After the disaster at the Onyx Room, Marcus hadn't just been embarrassed, he had been obliterated. The Sterling Hale board, terrified of Jiang Wei's influence and the revelation of their hidden debt, had fired Marcus the next morning. He had lost his job, his reputation, and his access to the family trust. But a man like Marcus Sterling doesn't disappear. He festers. "He's suing us, isn't he?" Elena asked, not turning around. "Served 10 minutes ago," Leo confirmed, placing a thick stack of documents on the desk. "Breach of non-disclosure, theft of trade secrets, and tortious interference. He claims you used confidential information overheard as a server to manipulate Mr. Jiang and steal the lithium deal for yourself." Elena laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I didn't steal the deal. I saved it, then he killed it. The deal never happened." "It doesn't matter," Leo said gently. "The lawsuit freezes our assets, and with the bad press, the board in Shanghai is getting nervous. Mr. Jiang is refusing to comment. He says—" "Let me guess," Elena interrupted. "He says, fire tests gold." "Exactly." Elena closed her eyes. Jiang Wei was a mentor, but he was also a Darwinist. He had thrown her into the deep end to see if she could swim. If she drowned, he would simply find another CEO. He had given her the opportunity, but he wouldn't fight her battles. "Get my car," Elena said, turning back to the room. Her eyes were hard. "I'm not going to hide in this office while Marcus tears my life apart." "Where are we going?" Leo asked. "Legal?" "No," Elena said, grabbing her coat. "We're going to the one place Marcus thinks I won't go. We're going to the Sterling Hale headquarters." The lobby of Sterling Hale was a cathedral of marble and intimidation. When Eleanor walked in, the security guards stiffened. They recognized her from the news. "I'm here to see the chairman," Eleanor told the guard. "Mr. Richard Sterling. Do you have an appointment?" The guard sneered. "Tell him the waitress is here," Elena said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "And tell him if he doesn't see me, I'll give an exclusive interview to the Wall Street Journal about the $400 million of unreported debt his grandson tried to hide from the Chinese government." 5 minutes later, Elena was sitting in a leather chair across from Richard Sterling. The patriarch of the family was 80 years old, sitting in a wheelchair, hooked up to a breathing apparatus. He looked like a dried apple, shriveled, but tough. "You have nerve," the old man wheezed. "I'll give you that. My grandson is an idiot, but you are a problem." "I'm not a problem, Mr. Sterling," Elena said calmly. "I'm a solution you failed to utilize. Your stock is tanking because the market thinks your family is incompetent. Marcus is proving them right by waging a public vendetta against a woman who outsmarted him." "He says you stole his life," Richard croaked. "He threw it away," Elena countered. "I'm here to offer you a ceasefire. Call off Marcus, make him drop the lawsuit, and issue a retraction on the lies he fed the press. If you do, I won't release the audio recording of the dinner." Richard's eyes narrowed. "What audio recording?" Elena bluffed. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "The Onyx room has security cameras, Mr. Sterling, but they also have high-fidelity audio for the VIP tables. Pierre, the manager, is a very old friend of mine. I have Marcus on tape, admitting to fraud, racial slurs against Mr. Zhang, and explicitly betting his job against my translation skills. If that tape leaks, the SEC won't just fine you. They will dismantle this firm." It was a lie. The Onyx room didn't record audio at tables. It was illegal in New York without consent. But Richard Sterling didn't know the restaurant industry. He only knew fear. The old man stared at her. He calculated the risk. "Marcus is uncontrollable," Richard said slowly. "He has gone rogue. He isn't listening to me. He's listening to his new partner." Elena frowned. "What partner?" "The man who helped him craft the smear campaign," Richard said, coughing. "A man named Silas Thorne, a corporate fixer. Nasty business. Marcus promised him half your company if they destroy you." Elena felt a chill. Silas Thorne was legendary in New York. He wasn't a lawyer, he was a professional ruin maker. He didn't just sue people, he planted drugs, hacked phones, and destroyed families. If Marcus had hired Thorne, this wasn't just a rivalry anymore, it was a hit. "Get out of my office," Richard whispered. "You're smart, girl, but you're walking into a wood chipper. Marcus doesn't want his job back. He wants you dead, professionally and perhaps otherwise." Eleanor stood up. She maintained her composure until the elevator doors closed. Then she collapsed against the metal wall, gasping for air. She checked her phone, a new notification from an unknown number. It was a photo of her father, Arthur, sitting on a park bench in Queens, feeding pigeons, taken from a distance. The caption read, "Nice day for a walk, shame if he tripped." Marcus wasn't just coming for her job, he was coming for her heart. Elena stared at the photo of her father on her phone, her vision blurring with red-hot rage. The fear evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Marcus Sterling wasn't just coming for her job anymore, he was coming for her heart. "Leo!" Elena snapped, storming out of the Sterling building. "Find Brad, the nervous guy who was with Marcus that night. Bullies like Marcus always have a victim they keep close, and victims talk." It took 4 hours to find Brad. He was in a dive bar in the Lower East Side, nursing a cheap beer, looking unshaven and broken. Marcus had blacklisted him from every firm in the city, using him as a scapegoat for the failed deal. Elena slid onto the stool next to him. "He destroyed you, Brad, and now he's threatening my father." Brad winced, looking over his shoulder. "He's crazy, Elena. He's working with Silas Thorne now. They're planning to humiliate you at the shareholder meeting. They want to paint you as mentally unstable." "Brad, look at me," Elena said, her voice steel. "You can sit here and drink until you forget you went to Wharton, or you can help me bury him. If you help me, I will hire you at Viridia at triple your old salary. But I need everything." Brad hesitated, then whispered the secret that would end the war. He kept shadow files on a private server in his penthouse, proof that he embezzled from the family trust to pay for gambling debts. That's why the company is broke. It wasn't bad investments, it was theft. "Where is the server?" "In his penthouse," Brad said. "But it's a fortress. You can't get in." Elena smiled, a dangerous, razor-sharp expression. "I don't need to break in. I just need to get him to invite me." Elena went back to her office and set the trap. She issued a public challenge, a televised debate at the Plaza Hotel, regarding the ethics of the Zhang merger. Marcus, blinded by ego and eager to crush her publicly, accepted within the hour. Friday night arrived. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom was packed with global press. Marcus strode onto the stage like a gladiator, slick and manic. He spent 20 minutes ranting, displaying doctored emails on a massive screen, weaving a tale of Eleanor's deceit. "This woman is a con artist," Marcus boomed into the microphone. "She manipulated the translation to steal a legacy." He pointed a finger at her. "Admit it, you twisted my words." Eleanor stood behind her podium, wearing white, the color of mourning in Chinese culture. She looked calm. "I did manipulate the conversation," she said clearly. The crowd gasped. "I removed your insults. I polished your words so that a great man wouldn't see how small you really are." She pressed a button on a remote. The screen behind them shifted. It wasn't a document. It was a video. The audience went silent. The video showed the interior of Marcus's luxury penthouse. Marcus was pacing, holding a scotch, shouting at his fixer. Audio from video. "I don't care if she's innocent. Plant drugs in her car. Scare her father. I need that subsidiary money to cover what I stole from the pension fund." On stage, Marcus froze. His face went grey. "How did you get that?" Elena pointed to the back of the room. Standing there were 3 women in maid uniforms. One of them was Maria, Elena's best friend from the restaurant. "You hired a cleaning service for your victory party, Marcus," Elena's voice boomed. "Did you check who the staff was? You treat waitresses and cleaners like furniture. You talk about your crimes in front of us because you don't think we're people. But we see everything." The video continued, showing Marcus placing a hard drive into a safe. "That hard drive," Elena narrated, "contains the proof of your embezzlement. And while you were busy preparing for this debate, the FBI was executing a search warrant on your penthouse based on an affidavit provided by your former associate, Brad." Brad stepped out from the curtain. Marcus looked at him, then at the federal agents swarming the stage. "This is entrapment," Marcus screamed as the handcuffs clicked. "I am a CEO," Elena said, watching him be dragged away. "And you are finished. The truth needs no translation." As Elena walked backstage, adrenaline crashing through her, she found Zhang Wei waiting. He didn't clap. "You destroyed him," Zhang said solemnly. "Sun Tzu would be proud." "The lawsuit is dead," Elena said, exhaling. "Marcus was a fool," Zhang warned, his eyes dark. "But the men he borrowed that money from, the loan sharks, are not. You have won the battle, Elena, but you have just started a war with the underworld." Elena looked at her reflection. She saw the fighter beneath the suit. "I spent my life serving people who hated me, Mr. Zhang. I'm not afraid of sharks. I know how to fillet them." The war Zhang Wei predicted arrived 2 weeks later in the form of Julian Vane. He was the shark Marcus had borrowed 20 million from, and he appeared in Elena's lobby not to negotiate, but to collect. "Marcus doesn't have the money," Vane said, his voice smooth and deadly. "You do. You inherited his job, his bonus, and in my ledger, his liability." It was a shakedown. Vane was threatening to burn down her new life unless she paid a criminal debt she didn't owe. But Elena was done being a victim. She led him to the conference room and slid a file across the table. "The FBI has Marcus's hard drive, Julian," Elena said coldly. "They are days away from finding the wire transfers to your Cayman shell companies. If you touch me or my father, I will hand-deliver the unredacted logs to the district attorney." Vane's shark-like smile vanished, mutually assured destruction. "However," Elena continued, sliding a contract forward, "I have a better idea. Viridia Global needs security consulting. I will buy Marcus's debt for $2 million. Clean, legal money. You walk away rich and safe. In exchange, the debt is forgiven, and you disappear." Vane stared at her, calculating. She offered him a lifeline, disguised as a payout. He signed. Elena hadn't just defeated the underworld, she had gentrified it, turning a death threat into a transaction. 6 months later, Elena stood inside the Onyx room. It was dark and dusty. The scandal had bankrupted the owner, and the bank had foreclosed. Pierre, her old manager, was packing a box, looking defeated. "It is over, Elena," Pierre sighed. "The brand is dead." "No," Elena said, running her hand over table 4, the spot where Marcus had mocked her. "I bought the building." Pierre dropped his box. "You bought it?" "I'm reopening it," Elena smiled. "And I want you to manage it. Double your salary. But there is one rule. No one is invisible here. If a busboy has an idea, you listen." She had turned the sight of her humiliation into her empire. 1 year later, Eleanor sat behind the reinforced glass of a federal prison. Marcus Sterling sat on the other side, shaved head and hollow eyes. He looked at her with pure confusion. "Why are you here?" he rasped. "To gloat?" "To thank you," Eleanor said quietly. "You forced me to stop hiding. You were so loud and wrong that you forced me to find my voice." She leaned in. "I also paid off Julian Vane. You don't owe him anymore. You owe me." Marcus looked terrified. "What do you want?" "Nothing," Elena whispered. "I'm forgiving the debt, because unlike you, I don't need leverage to feel powerful. I'm free." She hung up the phone and walked away, leaving him screaming silently behind the glass. That night, Elena stood on her penthouse balcony. Her father, Arthur, stood beside her, his eyesight fully restored, gazing at the moon through a telescope. "I didn't know you were this brave, Ellie," he said softly. Elena looked down at the city lights, a sea of diamonds she now commanded. She had started as a servant in the shadows and ended as a queen in the light. "I just translated, Dad," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "I told them what the world really meant, that no one is invisible unless they choose to be." This story isn't just about a waitress who got lucky. It's a brutal lesson on the cost of arrogance. Marcus had everything but lost it all because he lacked respect. He looked at Eleanor and saw a servant, failing to realize he was standing next to the only person who could save him. Eleanor proved that true power isn't about how loud you shout, but how well you listen. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now. It helps the algorithm find more people who need to hear this. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a part of our next saga. What would you have done if you were Elena? Would you have saved Marcus or let him fail? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.